Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of the Legacy Den. My name is Mason, and with me, as always, is my buddy Rob. Rob, how's it going, man?
Things are good. How you doing, Mason?
I'm doing all right. I'm dealing with kid drama. My son went to his kindergarten. He had his first day of kindergarten today.
That's a big step.
Yeah, it was kind of an exciting moment up until, sort of just did whatever. So what are you drinking tonight, man?
Tonight I am drinking the premium malts. This is called Kaoru Ale. It's really, really fruity. It's easy to drink. People who don't even like beer will drink this and go, wow, I didn't know I could drink beer. It's delicious. I got a tall can because it's absolutely my favorite. So I will be drinking this throughout the night.
That is some good stuff. I've had that stuff before, and I'm a big fan of ales. I decided that I'm going to join you in drinking tonight. I've got a little bit of a vodka tonic going on.
Good, some Costco brand.
Yeah, well, I mean,
save money by buying in bulk and use that bulk and buy more bulk magic cards.
Well, yeah, that is the idea. I'm actually kind of bummed, though. They actually had French vodka for the longest time at Costco, and I loved it because the word on the internet was that it was basically produced by the same company that made Grey Goose. And I went there the most recent time I went to Costco, and they didn't have it at all. I was super bummed. So all they had was this cheap American stuff, and it's okay.
Costco does that. They have stuff sometimes, and then you go there and they don't have it.
Yeah. So,
Yes.
what's been going on with you and Magic this week?
All right. Well, first, I have a couple of card spikes I want to talk about because we're both finance guys, right? So, the first card I want to talk about is Sunforger.
All right.
So Sunforger is an equipment that reads 3 mana. It says it's an equipment. Equipped creature gets +4/+0. For a red and a white, it has an activated ability. Unattach it. Search your library for a red or white instant card with converted mana cost 4 or less and cast it without paying its mana cost. Then shuffle your library. So, and you have to pay 3 to equip it.
Mm-hmm.
So, seems like a strange spike. It went from $2-3 all the way up to 12, and now it's kind of down to 10-ish today. But still, that's a strange spike. Do you happen to know the reason?
Not until you told me earlier, but the one comment I can make on this card is I've actually had like 2 or 3 in my binder for the longest time, just because, they're just some random things that you pick up for 50 yen out of a bulk box. And, you can ship it for $1 to the United States, but I've never been able to really trade them or use them for anything.
Right. Nobody looks in your binder and says, do you got Sunforgers?
You got a Sunforger?
A Sunforger?
Oh, man.
Oh, I hear that card.
Hook me up.
That card's so good. It's like $1. No, like nobody wants dollar cards because they can get them anytime. But
so what is this new card that's making it spike?
She just got spoiled in War of the Spark. She's called Feather the Redeemed. I'll put it here. Red, white for Legendary Angel. 3/4 flying. She says, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets a creature you control, you exile it instead of putting it in your graveyard. If you do, return it to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. So what you do is with Sunforger, you equip it, you unequip it, you cast an instant or sorcery for free, targeting one of your guys, like give your guy +4/+4 and trample until end of turn. And then it will get exiled and it'll go back to your hand. This is especially good if you can cast something that targets your guy and lets you draw a card while doing it, because then you just get a lot of card advantage. So people are saying Feather has a lot of really, really interesting cards that she can use well with Sunforger. So okay. Sunforger spikes because of Feather.
So we're looking at EDH decks. We're looking at red-white EDH decks that are going to be built around this commander. And we're looking at, I guess, pump spells, or it says it's only instants and sorceries.
Correct.
And you can basically unattach a Sunforger and search up for an instant or sorcery. What what instants and sorceries are going to be, making, the cut for this kind of
A
deck?
financial spike. Well, in Cold Snap, there's what looks like an uncommon called Balduvian Rage. It's X and red. Instant, target attacking creature gets plus X plus so until end of turn. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So,
Okay, but that's an X spell?
yeah, but what you can do is you can still you just cast it once and you still draw a card. It replaces itself, and then it goes to your hand, and you could keep just playing it for red, and just drawing an extra card every turn.
Okay, so it's basically card advantage because it's going back to your hand anyway. Yeah, okay, I could see that.
Or if you really need the commander damage, that can just, oh wait, I have 6-7 mana here. All right, now I'm gonna Balduvian Rage my Feather and swing for commander damage for lethal. I mean, that's just an example. But really, I think my thoughts on the spikes, it's a flavor of the week type thing. I don't think the deck is going to be competitive. People love angels. You can put a bunch of angels in the deck and it'll be fun. She's an angel commander. There's that. But overall, I do believe that the spike is not real. And people who are buying into Sunforgers hoping to make money at I found one for $3, you have to sell really quickly because I think it's going to drop again back to close to its original price.
Yeah. I'm looking at Card Kingdom on their buy list right now, and they're looking for an original Ravnica foil. They're willing to give $7.80 store credit and $2.28 for the non-foil, and that's it. They don't even have a marking for the magic
commander ones or whatever. Yeah.
Well, no, there's only only other copy is the one that was the Modern Masters copy.
It was in Commander 2016 as well.
Was it?
Yes, Sunforger was Commander 2016 as well. But still, I mean, that shows that there's really a lot of copies of this card out there, to be honest. And if you're looking at the red-white deck, that was the one that had Fiery Confluence, there was this Incubator, and a few other really high-dollar cards. And Sunforger was just one of the bulk that went with the rest of the deck, No, I'm thinking of a different one, sorry. I'm thinking it's Partners. All the partner commanders actually just have a bunch of value in them. Sorry, what I said was wrong. I'm not going to edit out what I said because I accept my mistakes.
Don't at Rob. He admits
don't at mistake. Rob. Yeah, but honestly, except for 2017, a lot of the commander decks have just been huge, crazy value. They're all at least worth what the cost MSRP is. And the great part about Japan is Japan sometimes has English ones that they're on discount for, $15 or so. I just
been sitting on the shelf forever and they never move them.
Yeah, throw a $15 price tag on it. Then I immediately grab it. Doesn't matter which one it is.
I have some 2013s that have been socking away in my closet that I'm still figuring out what to do with. I have Eternal Bargain and what is it? What's the one that's with Prosh, the Sky Raider? I forget what that one is called. But yeah, I've been sitting on those because I picked those up for like $15 or something.
Yeah, and at that point it's maybe save them for if someone comes over and they're like, I really, really want to play Commander. You're like, hey, you can at least use this and try. Fail miserably against our decks, but
I've been really tempted to pop Eternal Bargain simply for the Toxic Deluge because that card is now like $20.
Yeah, Toxic Deluge went back up. TNN is down to 10 or something, but it's a card that can easily jump up to 30.
Well, I mean, part of what made all of that stuff good is because you knew that TNN reprint was going to come, and everybody was popping the Mind Seize. That was the one that had TNN in it,
right?
And all of those other cards just immediately hit the market. They sold off everything that was in that deck, but there was all of these extra ones. Because you could get like 2 of the Mind Seize and then just get a hodgepodge of some of the other ones.
That's
and
true.
So
they
all of those
more for the
sealed
Mind
ones,
Siege, less for the other ones.
Yeah, and so they were just like giving those dang things away. Excuse me. Yeah. All right, so there was another spike that was on your radar that you wanted to talk about. What's the other card?
Smothering Tithe. Tithe. Smothering
Tithe.
Tithe.
Yeah, as in a tithe of cost, which is what Orzhov,
Yes, Smothering Tithe. So, for those who don't know, it was just printed in Ravnica Allegiance, and it's 4 mana enchantment. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they can pay 2. If they don't, you get a treasure. So it essentially reads: whenever one of your opponent draws a card, create a treasure. And in EDH, this is fantastic. And people kind of realized it at first, like, hey, this is actually pretty good for EDH. And then cards like Feather and all these other decks just started. People kind of realized how good it actually is. I played with it in a couple games, and it's just, it gives you extra mana every turn pretty much. And that's even if nobody really does any extra drawing. If there's extra drawing, God forbid someone time spirals, you get 21 treasures, because nobody's going to pay, like 48 mana to stop you from doing that. So,
I've been debating. I have a couple of copies of Smothering Tithe, and I've been thinking about putting it in my Narset deck. And on the one hand, it is pretty much free ramp that can basically allow me to cast the big spells that is basically just jam-packed into my deck. But on the other hand, it's also like a 4 mana enchantment, and if I'm up to 4 mana, I'm pretty much about to cast my commander anyway, and like probably combo off and win. So I've been debating about whether or not to throw it in there.
I think it's good. I think it's legit. I don't know how high it's gonna go. It's up to about $10 right now. I don't really know how high a rare from a standard set right now can go, but I think if you can buy in around 5, it's worth it. $10 if you need it for a deck, you should pick it up. I think this one is legit. I think unlike the other spike with Sunforger, I do think that Smothering Tithe is legit. And if someone says, hey, I've got a Tithe, I want to trade for a Sunforger, ship it their way. It's like, yeah, sure. Do that trade and run.
So Big Web has Smothering Tithe English for 700 yen a pop. Seems like it could be like if you want to park your money there and just wait for like a couple of years, you might be able to double your investment. But for the most part, I don't know.
Well, my thing about $7 buying is the best way to get rid of cards is always buy list. That's the easiest way to get rid of cards, especially a lot of cards that are, somewhat lower value, not like high-end things. With high-end things, I say take it to Facebook or whatever. But something like, 7 copies of Smothering Tithe, buy listing is your best bet. And if you're buying in at 7, how much is a buy list? If they're buying at $7.50, is it really worth investing, $35 of your money just to make back $2 later?
Hallelujah's got you can buy up to 8 English copies. They have 22 in stock for 580 yen a pop.
It's a little better, and that's kind of one of those things that when I go to Hallelujah and you join a tournament, they kind of give you like a $1 or $2 off single coupon just for joining. So even if the tournament doesn't fire, you still get the coupon. And I'll usually get it, a couple $1 things. But this is kind of the thing where if I can take it from 580 to 480 or 380, then yeah, that's definitely worth buying.
So. I don't know. I might be in for another play set at 580 a pop just to, have something to sit on.
I mean, I think the card is legit. I'm not super crazy finance. I'm not like 100% put all your money here, but I do own some copies because I saw them at, back when they were $1 or $2 each, and I picked up a bunch because I think the card is really good.
You're not Mason crazy to go out and run out and buy 45 copies of Chromatic Lantern.
I mean, that is a legit plan though. Like if honestly, if I was a little smarter, I probably would have bought 45 copies of this card when they were $1. When I realized, hey, this card is really good, that's when stars started kind of selling out of them when $2 each. So.
Oh man.
But
I might actually have to make a Hallelujah buy here. I'm now shopping.
Cheap in Japanese. They are super cheap in Japanese. So.
Oh yeah. For Japanese, it's 100 yen.
And the thing about EDH cards is they're super cheap in other languages. It's like cheaper than proxies sometimes. Like if you want a Smothering Tithe in Japanese, you can probably get one for $1. I'm not even joking, 50 cents, $1. Like that's how big the difference is. Because it's a card, it has a lot of text on it. It's new, so not everybody knows it. Everyone's going to have to read it, and nobody wants to sit there and try to figure out what a foreign language card does without just being able to look at it. It's inconvenient, and people don't like doing that.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Okay, so you have Legacy Tourney third place is our next thing that you wanted to talk about.
So I went to a Legacy tournament over the weekend. I brought Blue-White Stoneblade. 13 people joined. It was at a store in Den Town called Dragon on the 6th floor. They have a big Magic play space, lots of big chairs and stuff. So 13 people joined. First round, I played against Death and Taxes, and I beat them. Second round, I played against Burn, and I had both Batterskull and Jite and Stoneforge Mystic in my opening hand. So I was pretty much able to cast Stoneforge. He didn't have the ability to remove it. So then Batterskull down. I was holding Spell Pierce too. And then I just cast a Jite and he just scooped. Game 2, he just flooded on lands, and if Burn floods on lands, they just can't win. Especially when I get, again, Stoneforge Mystic and Batterskull. So,
did not have the, what is it? Smash to Smithereens?
Oh, I countered it. I mean, I Spell Pierced it.
Good.
But, yeah, and then third round, I played against Grixis Control, and I think that deck is one of the worst matchups for Blue-White Stoneblade, because A, they have discards, so they can see what you're running with. B, they have red blasts. So, and they have like lightning bolts and stuff. So they can just easily deal with your creatures, your planeswalkers, anything. Like I can't keep a creature on the board. Like Vendilion Clique doesn't stick. Stoneforge Mystics die immediately. Snapcasters die immediately. TNN, they have edicts, right? So they do have answers for just about everything. So I can't even equip a Jite. Jite literally just sits there on the field while everything dies. And once they kind of like discard away anything I have, then they cast Jace, and it's just impossible to come back. So, and of course, if I'm able to even like cast a Jace, even if I'm like, oh, Force of Will, your Force, Jace is out, they just Pyroblast them the next turn, or they Bolt them the next turn, and my Jace just doesn't stick. And just Pyroblasts are just too difficult to deal with. Pretty much my only hope is back to basics and them tapping out, but that rarely happens because they're a control deck too, and they don't need to hurry because they win the long game. Usually Blue-White Stoneblade will win the long game, but Grixis Control does. So I just lost horribly third round. Fourth round, I played against Affinity. Did you know Affinity is still a deck? Because pretty much same as Modern, but guess what they run? Artifact lands and Ancient Tombs. Great.
I seem to recall a time in which you played against decks like that and ran Pernicious Deed to make them cry.
I did.
Just drink their salty tears.
I played Shardless Agent, and at that time with Shardless, you couldn't run too many 1 and 2 cost spells because if they didn't have a target, it was a waste. But I ran Deed, and then he has a bunch of his artifact lands and everything out. So I just deeded for like 2 and just got rid of everything. I was like, yeah, your lands too. He's like, doesn't it say non-lands? And I'm like, no, it just says artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. And he was just like, oh. And throws like literally his entire board just goes into his graveyard. He's left at the Glimmer Void, which died. So I played with Affinity, and yeah, I lost the second game because he cast Etched Champion, and I just didn't really have a way to deal with it. The first game I was able to kind of get through with Batterskull damage, but the second game he had Champion and plating, and I couldn't remove it in time. The third game, he got double Etched Champion also, but I had Council's Judgment, get rid of your only creature. Snapcaster, Council's Judgment, the next turn. So once that happened, and then I got my Batterskull and Jite out, he was just done. But it was crazy seeing Affinity. And the thing is, I took out one of the Lavinias in my board and added in an extra Disenchant because I felt like in this meta now, there's more decks that are running good artifacts and enchantments. So why not just run extra disenchants just to play against like the artifact deck? So, and
I see.
this disenchant did come in handy. I was able to disenchant a plating, which saved me a lot of damage throughout a couple turns.
Seems good.
Yep. And then we went to top 4. I was in 3rd place, and then I played against the Grixis control guy again, and I got whomped. But it was $10 entry fee, and my prize was a very, very sweet Leyline of Sanctity.
Oh, nice.
So they give out cards as prizes. First place was Snapcaster Mage. Second place was Aether Vial, and the 2 of us in 3rd place got Leylines. And I'm all right with that. It's English. I don't like getting Japanese cards as prizes sometimes, but English one, yeah.
Well, but even Leyline, like Leyline is a $20 card that's like a staple for various different things. Like,
I have no issues with getting a Leyline.
Yeah.
For $10 entry, yeah. And I got to have fun beating Affinity.
Miss living in Osaka. Wish I could.
Every once in a while, it's good to do tournaments. So, shall we move on?
Well, so one thing that I actually kind of wanted to talk about is the current meta that seems to be happening right now. You have been rolling pretty strong with Stoneblade for a while now.
Right.
And a lot of the other things, a lot of the tournaments and various different places that I've been hearing have been talking about how blue-white Stoneblade, blue-white Delver Blade, and all of these decks are doing really, really well. And some of the things that people have been talking about is that currently we're in a legacy meta that's sort of like a rock, paper, scissors kind of thing. And invariably what's going to happen is so many people are going to see that Stoneblade is running around, that Grixis control is going to rise up and start trying to take down the Stoneblade meta. And then, of course, some other decks are going to come and eat up the Grixis control deck, and then it's just going to be on to the next deck and the next deck and the next deck. And there seems to be various different opinions as to whether or not this is what we would consider a healthy meta or a not healthy meta. And I haven't had a chance to go and play very much. I've been playing, a little bit on MTGO, but how do you feel this meta is working out?
I think it's great. There's no one deck that's like just way too good at the moment. And a lot of the kind of unfair decks are being kept in check by the fair decks.
Yeah. I'm kind of the opinion that I like the whole, you can pretty much play any deck. Any deck is viable. You're going to have some good matchups. You're going to have some bad matchups. And it's literally just deciding which way you think the meta is going to break that one day.
I mean, and I went 3-0 at an FNM with Enchantress the other day.
Well,
I beat Eldrazi.
We all know that Enchantress is just OP. That deck needs to be banned.
It's too powerful.
Hardcore. Too powerful.
Utopia Sprawl ban.
Yeah, got to take it out. Yeah, that's sort of like, because that's how I also kind of looked at my performance with Blue-Red Delver when we were at GP Kyoto, because I felt like Blue-Red Delver was sort of the flavor of the month that time, and I just got completely curb stomped by the one Dark Depths player. And I have a feeling that he was probably running against various different forms of Delver all day long and just rolling house. So, yeah, I kind of dig it, though. Like, even though it can sometimes not break your way and sometimes leave you skunked with, just playing a whole field of people who were prepared to play against your deck, I like the whole, like, rock, paper, scissors kind of thing going on. Although I honestly don't think that with the new War of the Spark cards coming out, I don't see how that's going to remain this way. There's going to be too much of a shift.
I mean, one thing that would help my Grixis control matchup immensely would be just landing a Teferi, like a 3-mana Teferi.
Yeah.
Because I just know that whatever I do, they can't answer it.
Yeah. I'm certainly glad that I picked up 2 on pre-order now. The current pre-order price is now $20, and I grabbed 2 at the $15 mark. Hopefully the TCG Player store doesn't stiff me, but I don't think they will.
I don't think they will, because like you need the people who buy them at 10 to know, oh, people are buying at 10, we got to raise to 15. And then
Yeah.
once they get people buying it at 15, they raise to 20. But like you got in and you're one of the people who decided to buy in at that price. So there's no reason for them to cancel and be like, oh, you didn't buy in at 20.
I just have a hard time seeing how, like, how do you beat miracles when turn one they leave, their one mana open, turn two they drop a counterbalance, turn three they drop a Teferi, and now you are either, throwing everything you've got in order to counter those spells, or you let them resolve and then have to figure out some
Yeah.
way of
I
removing
mean,
it.
if Miracles has a hand like that, that's usually just game over. Especially if you're like on the fairer end of decks and you're not running things like Cavernous Souls or Aether Vial or whatever, then like, yeah, that's just rough. I
some
mean,
some people in the Blue Red Delver Discord were talking about Teferi and saying how, like, it pretty much negates like 20 cards out of your deck, and they're acting like the sky is falling, and we don't know yet, but it might be not so
I
great for
mean,
them next
you
meta.
can still daze Teferi itself.
This is true,
There's no
and
Cavern of Souls for Planeswalkers yet. When that day does come, believe you me, I will run that land.
five color five color super friends all the way, baby.
Even if it's pick one color, like it doesn't matter. But yeah.
All right, let's move on to Japanese stores.
Yeah, so we are the Legacy Den. We're based in Japan. So I think we should kind of start to do a little bit of Japan talk.
All right.
So one thing is that Japanese stores are just different from American stores in general. So the first and the biggest thing is that in Japanese stores, all the cards have a price set on them. And it's not like just done by TCG. It's not done by some automated system. They all manually have the price set on them, especially the ones in display cases. Like there's literally a sticker on the card that says the price. So
They
it's
use
not
that pricing gun like you would find in those old bodegas.
right. Like, because I've been to a couple stores in America and I've looked and I've just kind of asked them, like, oh, how much is it? And they're like, let me check TCG mid. Oh, it's this much. And I'm like, if everyone sells TCG mid, then, it's, well, I know people say don't buy cards at Spike at cheap prices because that kind of hurts the local store. But in Japan, it's kind of, I still do it.
Well, I mean, part of what the way the Japanese stores operate is that they seem to be trying to move the cards. Okay. Whereas like your local game stores seem to kind of are okay with just sitting on the cards, and they will look up a price and tell you what the price is. So you're not going to have people like streaming in and trying to buy all of up, a certain copy of a card just because it's going up or anything like that. But they are going to keep their stock. They're going to have their card stocks. And if you want a Jace the Mind Sculptor or you want a Scalding Tarn, you're going to get it for the price that's, relatively fair. I think that the reason that the Japanese shops actually mark their prices on the cards is because they are dealing with multiple shops all over that they have to be competitive with. They are dealing with multiple different card games, because for them it's not just Magic the Gathering, but it's also like Yu-Gi-Oh, Duel Masters, Pokemon. It's all of these different card games all together in a shop. They don't have time to look up every single price for every single card. They don't have the manpower for that. And so oftentimes they'll just, mark stuff up, and when a card spikes, they'll, sell 4, 5, 6, 7 copies of it and then realize, oh yeah, okay, we need to adjust the price. And
Yeah.
then they'll start marking
So
them.
there's a couple of ways stores do that. One of the things that they do is a store will either kind of like set a limit, like you can only buy 4, where some stores they're like you can buy 20. Generally, you can't buy more than 4 or 8 copies of a card here. And what they'll do is sometimes I even see it happen. I'm like, I want 4 copies of this card, and I'll write down. They'll give me 4 copies for that price, and then they'll take their pricing gun. They'll go right to that showcase and put a new price on it higher. Like, oh, someone bought 4 copies, bam, increase the price. I remember when Dig Through Time came out, and it was still, like, I found one shop that had them for $2 each. This is before they hit like $10. I went and immediately wrote down 4 Dictor time, and the guy looked at it and just went like, "Oh man," because he's like, "I know I could have marked these up to $5 and still sold them, but I just lost 4 copies at $2 each because I didn't mark up the price." And they can't go like, "Oh well, now that I know you're buying them for $2 each, I'm marking up the price," because that's just a dick move that loses business. So.
Yeah. I've a lot of times Japanese stores will hold to their guns even on a price. Very rarely do I actually demand to have a card that's in the case and say, I can see it for this price, please give me this price. And they'll say, sorry, no, this card is spiking, we have to change the price. That's happened to me like maybe once in,
And
how many years being here.
I can understand if it happens if the person before me buys like 4 copies and then they go to raise the price and like, oh, we just raised the price, because it doesn't really have to do with whether I bought that 5 minutes later or 20 minutes later or an hour later. It's just the price was already risen, and it wasn't because they saw me buying it. And I can understand that because that's their policy anyways. Another thing that stores do is they'll have like, say, like 6 copies of a card in the case. The first one will say $5. And then the second one will say $5. The third one might say $5.50, and then $6, and then $6. So what they'll do is they'll say, oh, if you want to get this third and fourth copy, they're going to cost a little more, because if you're buying it at this price, then we're going to raise the price a bit.
Yeah.
So that kind of prevents them from losing out too much if a card does go up.
Yep. But getting back to the point I was talking about the set price being the price you get, I actually had one instance where I went in and I noticed that they had Erebos, God of the Dead. And gods are always one of my pet cards to look for if they have it for cheap, because if you can pick it up for 200 yen, you can move it in the United States for like $5, because they always hover around the $7 to $8 to $10 range, and they're great on buy lists. I noticed that one shop had an Erebos for, I think it was 200 yen. And I went up to the store and I pointed it out, and he got it out of the case, and I bought it along with like a handful of other cards. And he rang me up, and I got the cards and I got the receipt, and I started leaving the store, and I started looking at the receipt, and I noticed that they charged me $5 for the Erebos. And I actually went right back into the store, and I was like, I don't want to be that kind of guy, but it says right here on the card 200 yen, and you guys charged me 500 yen for it. And this was a case of like there being a barcode on the back. He was just scanning it. He was not, typing the numbers or anything.
It's not like
they weren't trying to screw me.
Just like, haha, I'm going to get that white gaijin. No, it's just scan, scan, scan.
So anyway, I went back to him and I was just like, do you mind giving me the money back, or refunding the card or something like that? And he was just like, oh yeah, I'll hook you up. And he literally gave me 300 yen back, and he was just like, sorry for the mistake, man. And I was very, very happy. I will absolutely go back to that shop anytime, because they were legit.
I have another example of the pricing is what you get. So I went to a store and I saw
clears his throat.
I saw this in the showcase. So I don't know if you can see. That is the foil.
Yeah.
Okay. Foil replenished. So you got the little star. I saw it, and it was priced at this one, which is a regular one. And on the little barcode thing, it said replenish 3,000 yen. But when there were foils, it would say replenish F. So somebody got this foil replenish. They forgot to mark it as foil, marked it as regular, threw it in the case, and I saw that and went, I want that. And the person behind the counter, they didn't know magic. They're just, oh, scan, here you go. So that's the story of how I got my foil replenished for literally like
$30.
The same price as a regular one, which even $30 for an English one is fine. That's a normal price.
Yeah, I'm looking at the goldfish, and currently the normal is at $52, and the foil is at $434.
Yeah.
So that's a good find.
So that's one of those things that it wouldn't happen in an American store. You wouldn't get that lucky that lucky, like, oh yeah, I think let me double check. Oh, I checked the regular price when it's clearly foil, you know. That doesn't usually happen that much.
No.
And also one thing that's great though is if you kind of go to the same stores and you know the same guys, you can do this in America too. But you know, I went to a tournament and they were just like, "Oh, did you want to buy anything today?" I was like, "If you lower the price on these, and I'll buy 2 of them together." And I'm like, "How much can you lower it by?" They're like, "Well, let me check my computer thing." And they're like, oh, "I can lower it to this much." And that's the story of how I got 2 containment priests for $35 each. The invocations, when they were marked at 50. I'm like, I'll buy 2 of them if you sell them to me for cheaper. He's like, mark them from 50 to 35. And I'm like, yes. But again, he was also hooking me up
all day long.
Yeah. But one thing about the stores that price cards the way they want to is uncommons and stuff, especially older ones, tend to be really expensive in Japan. So, like for example, I'm trying to get middle school decks together. So I'm trying to get copies of Duress from Urza's Saga or 7th edition. At stores here, they're either not available at all or they're like $2 or $3 a card. Card Kingdom, everyone says Card Kingdom's really expensive. Card Kingdom has them for like 50 yen each, 50 cents each, 60 cents each. I can get a playset at Card Kingdom for the price that I could get one in Japan. And that's just one example. This happens a lot with kind of older commons and uncommons, is that they just tend to be really, really expensive compared to how much you would pay for it in America. And that's kind of one issue with not being able to buy at TCG. Just one thing I've noticed.
Well, that's something worth mentioning as well. Simply the Japanese don't really have TCG here. So a price is basically what somebody decides it is. And it's very, very difficult in order to check on price spikes unless, of course, somebody is tapped into the American market.
Yeah, I mean, I check MTG stocks, and that has actually allowed me to see if something spikes and be like, oh, this old $1 card is now $7. Okay, go to the stores, buy a bunch at $1, and then ship them off the Card Kingdom a couple weeks later.
Yep.
It happens cold storage and attunement and the Ravines or whatever. So.
Oh yeah.
Or tectonic rift and stuff. So stuff like that.
The stupid cards.
Yeah, just cards that were like $1 and should be $1, but for some reason they spiked up to 6 and 7, and I bought them at $1 because the stores obviously didn't get that information faster than I did. So, okay, so some other interesting things about the stores is some of them have their price is the tax included and the tax separate. And that really, really can trick you. Because what you can do is you can go to one store that has a tax included, see a card for $10, and then you go next door to the store where they don't have tax included and tax is 8%, and then the card is like 950 yen. And I was like, whoa, it's 50 yen cheaper than the other place. But it's like, wait, after tax, it ends up being actually like way more. And it's really tricky because like the stores don't really differentiate on the card. Sometimes like whether it's price included, tax included or not. Like sometimes they do.
Yeah.
But sometimes like they don't.
Well, one thing I would go into mention is that Japan has 8% tax, which I assume is more than the United States at this point. I think the United States is at what, 6?
Yeah, but Chicago's up to like 10%.
Oh, really? I haven't been back in the old stomping ground in quite a while.
America.
Yeah. Japan, up until recently, had fairly low taxes, and it was part of their general idea that they would include the taxes in any price marked.
As to not confuse the customer, right?
As to not confuse the customer.
Only 4% at the time. 4%.
Yeah, tax was fairly low, I remember. And I think this was up until, what, 2016?
Something like that a few years ago, yeah.
Yeah, it was like 2016, 2015, where tax was fairly low, pretty reasonable, and it was almost always included in the price. And then things switched over where they jumped from 4 to 8%. And basically, a whole bunch of shops decided that they were no longer going to include the tax in the price just because they thought it was going to, get
They were going
customers
to
to
lose a
not
lot
buy
more money.
things. Yeah, they thought they were going to lose money. Now, some card stores said, well, screw it. We're not going to deal with that. We're just going to leave the tax in the card price. And they generally didn't mark up the prices or anything like that.
Correct.
They were just like, screw it. We'll just leave the, tax from the price of the card and
The
just have
biggest
it as
changes
is.
ended up being the stores that just said, okay, instead of having the tax included, we are just going to
have the tax on top.
Yeah, just have it add tax at the end. And then those stores just end up being the ones I rarely shop at because after the tax, it just ends up being more than I think I wanted to spend on it. So,
yeah, the only local game store that I have in my area has the tax on top, and it's almost always brutal because everything you buy is just a little bit more expensive than you expected it to be.
And 8%, I round it to 10% usually. So if a card is, 600 yen, I round it to like, it's about going to be 660.
660. Yeah.
Or if a card is 4,000 yen, I'm like, well, it's going to be 440. That's what I round it to. And that's a big difference. It's almost a $5 difference when it's, a $50 card. When one store has a card for $50 and another store has it for $50 with 8% tax, that is a big deal. So
took a big bite out of my butt when I bought a Scrubland after they spiked up to $200, and they were still had theirs marked up. They had theirs at like 7,000 yen, and I was just like,
$75.
Yeah, it was pretty beat up, but
yeah, I mean, like if you can get that's one nice thing is, again, if a card spikes, you're like, oh, I really need that card and I don't want to miss out on it. If you have time, you can just run to the card stores, grab what you need before it crazy spikes, and then it'll spike a couple days later generally, especially if it's not because of EDH and if it's because of reserve list or whatever. But one thing though that stores do, it helps a bit to make up for the tax, is they have point cards. So some stores, they give you like 1% to 10% based off the store of what you buy back on the point card. So one of the stores, they charge 8% tax and you get 10% back on your card whenever you buy something. So if you buy a $50 card, you get, you pay like $54, you get $5 in points back. So the nice part about that is the points you can generally use for anything. You can use it for sleeves, supplies, packs, singles, whatever. And it's kind of nice if you're really kind of trying to get like a $60, $70 card one day. Like, I kind of have cash today, but if I really want this card in a month and I don't really have too much cash, oh wait, I have this point card. It's got $70 on it. Okay, well, I'm just going to buy it then. One thing that Hallelujah does is they give you points if you do well in tournaments. If you go 2-1 in an FNM, they give you $5 in points, which is your entry fee. And if you go 3-0, you get 1,500 yen in points, $15 in points. And weekend tournaments, they also like scale up what you get. But I ended up amassing almost $200 in points, and I just bought a Mox Diamond that they had there. I'm like, I want to buy that Mox Diamond, points. Just done deal. So,
have you seen that Big Magic is now switching over their policy? I had my point card the last time I went to Big Magic in Nagoya, and
they have an app now.
Yeah, they have an app, and they said as of April 1st this year, I believe, they're phasing out their point card, and they're just going to use the app instead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all right. That's 21st century,
It's practically the same thing, but now you have to have a smartphone as opposed to having a plastic card.
Yeah, and honestly, I have so many point cards because each store has a point card. It's not like this is like a special thing that 1 or 2 stores have. Every single store, no matter
has its
what,
own point
has
card.
its own point card. And the systems are almost always different. Like one store is just, you pay every $5 you spend, you get 1 stamp. And if you get 10 stamps, you get $5 off.
Yeah.
It's just, sometimes they're simple. Sometimes it's like Yellow Submarines is just like, you get it for every $10 spent. And if you, cross here, you get 300 yen off. And if you go here, you get 700. And then here it's 1,000 and then 2,000. It's some crazy method that's just usually not worth it.
Yeah, Yellow Sub is kind of not very good, but Amenity Dream is by far the best one. Just giving 10% back.
10% back is huge, and that you can use it for anything. But the point card does cost $1 to buy. So if you get if you get $10 or more in cards, it's already paid for itself, technically. But so one more thing about stores is you can't trade in stores. A lot of stores explicitly have a no trading sign on them. So Mason, do you have any theories as to why?
Theories? Well, me and the scientists have been in the lab, and we've been theorizing that perhaps the stores don't want to be held accountable if some scuzoid decides to take advantage of some small kid and trade away, have the kid trade away a $30 mythic rare for a $2 uncommon.
Didn't that happen like a Narset in a snow-covered mountain or something at one point in time? Like some dude traded some kid, like, you know, he's like, oh, I want your Narset, and so he gave him like a foil snow-covered mountain. And then the kid's dad went back and was like, that's a shit trade. And then the snow-covered mountain ends up actually being worth more in like a month, but whatever. Okay. Anyways, so yeah, I think that's correct. Japan actually has a weird sense of responsibility and who's like liable for things. Like,
so it's actually a legal issue.
It might be, because if, say, I'm going to work by bicycle, and I get hit by a car. You know who's responsible to pay the insurance? My work. Because if I wasn't going to work, I wouldn't have been hit by a car, because I wouldn't have been on the road at that time going to work. So the work is actually responsible for anything that happens between you at your home and going to work and back. So
I think your work can be held responsible, but on the other hand,
but that's why
you would also more than likely sue the person who has hit you with their car.
Or honestly, if you hit someone with your car and you're driving to work in Japan, like same thing, like your work might have to pay a lot of insurance money out for your mistake because you were going to work. And it might be similar with card stores here, where the card store, some mom might say like, hey, I came to your store yesterday, and in your store, my kid got sharked. My kid got trade sharked. Some guy came in, smooth talked my kid out of an expensive card and gave him crap cards in exchange. And what are you going to do about it, store? And stores, you know how they can avoid that? Just saying no trading.
Yeah.
And I think it's also for their business, right? Like,
yeah. Generally speaking, trading is not very good when you're trying to sell singles. But like, I do think that you're on to something when it comes to accountability, because laws are very, very tricky when it comes to accountability, and you can theoretically, hold someone accountable that really should not be held accountable for, something stupid and random. And the Japanese are very, very good and very cautious about that sort of thing. They don't want to have any risk involved.
Yeah, I think it's a caution thing. So big chains tend to avoid trading. I think little mom and pop stores might just turn a blind eye. But yeah, obviously
for the most part, you can like work out a deal and then just leave the shop and then exchange cards and then come back inside, and no one would really be upset about it.
I have seen a sign that says you cannot trade, talk about trading either. It's written there. So you
don't even think about trades.
Yeah,
if you're thinking about trades, we're going to call the police.
Trading. You don't have an intention to want to trade in this store, right? Like
you can't even have a dictionary with the word trading in it.
They do like a brain scan, like, oh, you don't want to trade. Okay, cool. You can go in. Oh, you're thinking about trading. All right, get out of here. But
if you're a stockbroker, you're absolutely not allowed to come in.
Stockbrokers are banned. Like, I just want to play Magic.
I just want to play Magic. Why are you being so mean to me?
Yeah. So I've never really done trading in stores here. The only times I do trading in stores is with people I already know when we're meeting up and saying, oh, do you want to bring your trades, Mason? Sure. Okay, cool. We'll go to the store and we'll look at each other's binders. But like, in American stores, I can just hold out my binder and be like, hey, anyone want to make some trades? I got my binder here. Anyone want to trade? And people will, and it's fine. But that just cannot happen in stores in Japan. So, and again, yeah, like if they're trying to sell singles and you're like, oh, I want this card and I have these cards, you can just go to the store, sell the cards, and then buy the card you want, and it's good for their business. But it's kind of bad for the consumer. But good for
depends
business.
on what their Kaitori prices are.
And sometimes their Kaitori price is good enough where you're fine with that trade. Kaitori, it means buying and selling. So, like trade selling in cards, buy listing it's called Kaitori in Japanese. And for some reason, when we're talking about like selling cards to stores, it's easier to say Kaitori than I want to sell cards to a store, or because when we say buy listing, we tend to think more like shipping it to Card Kingdom. So if we do say Kaitori, it's for that reason. Speaking of buy listing and Kaitoriing, except for this past Kyoto GP, every single card store only buy lists, only Kaitori's for cash. There's no stores that Kaitori for store credit that I've ever seen.
Yeah, I guess I haven't ever seen that in Japan.
Because in the
I've never
States,
even
it's
thought
like,
about that.
you know, you sell cards and you get, oh, we'll give you this much cash, or you can get like a 30% up bonus and we'll get some trades. But here, like, I've never seen that. It's only, this is the price, cash, you know, and that's really it. So one thing that it does is, if I was to get store credit, I would go to a store and get a lot of store credit, and then I would use it all there because of stuff I want to buy. But because they don't do that, what I do is I sell it to a store, I get the money, and then I go to the store that has the cheapest and I buy it from there. So a lot of times I've gone to one store, sold, you know, $600-700 worth of things, and then gone to a different store and bought dual lands that are cheaper there. Whereas if the first store offered store credit, I would have bought it there. If the second store with better prices had store credit, I might have actually just bought it there too if I had a trade-in bonus. So it's got both good and bad things. The good thing is that really the cash values on a lot of them are pretty high. For the most part, compared to what you can get at Card Kingdom and stuff, the cash value for your cards is generally a lot higher than what you would get at American stores, is how I feel.
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with them being able to like look at the cards and assess it and tell you whether or not it's worth it to them to pick it up.
That's true. Japanese are pretty strict with their grading.
They're very strict with their grading, but they also have the right of refusal. They can literally say, yeah, this is your card and that is the listed price, but like I'm looking at these nicks and stuff like that, I can't offer you that, you know, and then you have the right to just say, okay, I'll take that card and, you know, take it right back. And that's perfectly fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, but so overall I think their cash prices are good. And they do, of course, have the option for you to say, oh, no, I don't want it to sell for that price. But one thing is some stores are really strict with the condition. Like something could have a little bit of, you know, slight nicks, still be considered near mint, because near mint is not the same as mint. It could be considered near mint, and they might say, like, there's some slight nicks on it, so we're going to have to mark it as lightly played. So this City of Traders, our buy list was $120. It's slightly played, cut it in half, $60. And it's just like, no, sorry, no. What? No, I'm not going to cut the price of this card in half because there's a couple of slight nicks on the edge. Like that is absolutely ridiculous. But they're like, that's the price that's written here in our computer. So,
yeah. One good thing about Japan prices, or well, Japan grading though, is you almost always can bet that you're going to get like some decent quality cards when you buy in your mint. Yeah, I picked up a couple of Buried Alives. They had foil Buried Alives Odyssey on Big Web, on Big Magic's site for 1,000 yen a piece, and they were in SP condition. They were going to be slightly played.
Slightly played.
Yeah. Well, they were pretty much near mint when they arrived in the mail.
Again, near mint is not mint. For everyone who's like, I want this perfect pack fresh card, it says near mint, but there's a slight nick on it. Near mint is not mint. That's what one thing I want to explicitly tell everyone who's listening. who thinks like, oh, like my card, it says near mint, but it's not 100% pristine. It's like, well, then that is mint. And that's why stores don't want to say their stuff is near mint. They might have something that's near mint and they'll shove it down to SP or LP because they're scared someone is going to say, I got this card, I don't think it's near mint, refund me. You know, and that's probably why Big Web does that kind of thing. Could be.
I think that they're incredibly strict with their grading. But
that is very true too. They're incredibly strict. Like in Japan, like NM is mint, pretty much tax fresh. So, but that also
I think that also has to do with their customer base. Japanese all really, really, really want them to have the nicest, cleanest, crispest cards.
Exactly. And to be honest, like this isn't Magic related, but if you're trading back video games or something, if you're trading back like a PlayStation, like the console, and you have the PlayStation, it's in the box, you have like all the wrappings that everything goes in, you know, they'll give you like, okay, cool, this is fine. But if it's just like the cords and the PlayStation, everything's in working condition, otherwise the console itself is pristine, they're like, oh, this box has a dent in it. They're going to dock you points because the box isn't perfect. And anytime I've bought a used console in Japan, that looks new. Everything in it looks brand new. It's fantastic. So buying things used here is great because they take such good care of their things. And yeah, and also what happens is if a card is beat up, like they might have like a lightly played or, you know, card with a bunch of nicks in it. Oh, they mark that card down. That price just plummets, and it's great because sometimes I'm looking for a card, like say I want to buy a Force of Will. I don't want to pay $110 for a brand new near mint one because it's going to go in a deck and I'm going to bend the corners of it because I'm using it and flicking it like an idiot. But they have a played one, it's $75. Yeah, sure. Give me that one.
Why not?
Why not, right? You know, lightly played cards, you know, I don't mind paying the big percentage cut that they're showing.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. Of course, everybody wants near mint cards. Everyone values their cards higher than others. Of course, when I have a card, you know, I want it to be in good condition. When I'm buying a card, I want to just get the cheapest price, even if it is beat up. So,
well, it depends on if it's cards for playing or cards for like say speccing or selling.
It's cards for playing, definitely. Like a little beat up is acceptable.
Yeah. All right. So,
our last.
Do we want to talk about it? Yeah. Do you want to talk about tournaments and then finish up?
So just real quick. When I went to the States and I played in some tournaments there were always 4 rounds, if not more. There were very few like, oh, this tournament's only 3 rounds. And one thing about Japan is that the tournaments here are usually actually only 3 rounds. The FNMs start kind of late at like 7 something. Some of them start at like 5 o'clock, so that way you can do another one later. But they're always like 3 rounds. I don't know what it is about 3 in this country and not 4 rounds. Weekend tournaments that are bigger, you know, sometimes they're bigger, but you know, generally it's 3 rounds for a tournament, and prizes are actually usually given only to someone who goes 3-0. Like, of course, obviously in the States, if you get 4-0, you get the biggest prize. But you know, they do have stuff for people who go 3-1 and 2-2. But here, generally 3-0, you get like the prize, and 2-1, depending on the store, you might get something, but usually you're out of luck. And that's just a big difference where it's just like all or nothing. In some stores, it's like if you draw, it's the same as marking yourself a loss because all they care about is just, did you win? If you didn't win, then you lose, even if it's a draw. So if I'm going to draw with somebody because they were slow, I'll literally just give them the win because there's no points. Because Japanese people are just willing to accept like, oh, well, we drew, so I'm just going to write draw. I'm like, no, I'll give you the win because if you're not going to give it to me and one of us will get 3 points out of it and one of us will get 1 or 0 anyways. So like, might as well just give it to you because whatever. Then one of us has a chance of 3-0ing.
But, yeah, it's sort of unfair as far as like, you know, stores. You'd think that like at least 2-1, they should give you, I don't know, 100 yen in store credit or you know, points or whatever. Yeah.
Well, Harder they give your entry fee back at 2-1, but they 2-1 and 2-0-1 are both the same exact thing. Like they don't give you like 700 yen if you go 201 or something. So that's kind of annoying.
Yeah, for me, it's been so long playing out in Osaka. I really need to plan a weekend and go back out there and just
come
hit a
out
whole bunch of
anytime.
tournaments.
Let me know. And speaking of tournaments, they are usually low entry fee though. They're usually $3 to $5 for a night, whereas in the States they're probably closer to 10 to 15. Of course, drafts are not included, but it's just one of the things where Japan, it's a whole gambling law thing where you can't give cash prizes, but what you can do is you can give store credit, or you can give points for your point card, or you can just give singles or whatever. So,
yeah.
But low entry fee is kind of Japan style anyway. It's kind of more for fun. So people are joining these vintage tournaments with like $20,000 decks, charging $5 entry fee or $3 entry fee, playing for like, a $5 coupon or something. It's pretty funny. So one thing that Japanese people do, so I'll get my deck. So I have my deck right here. So we're going to play. Before we start playing, I'm going to do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. 5, put it on the table. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, put it on the table. I'm not going to show it to you. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, put it on the table. 15 cards. This is my sideboard. It's 15 cards. They'll show it to you, and then you have to look at them. Oh, 15 cards. Okay, and then they put that back in their box and they start shuffling. So, do you have any theories as to why Japanese people do this?
I thought it was technically in the rules that you're supposed to provide a visual confirmation that you have 75 total cards. And in doing so, you not only provide your opponent with a visual confirmation of it, but you are also making sure that you are not misboarded or have forgotten to unboard from your last round. This is actually something that's been discussed a lot in articles in the United States for anybody who's come over to Japan. They seem to like this style, and a lot of different people have said that they kind of wish that American tournaments were more like this. However, one thing that I always do is they want to do it every single time. Like you play game one, and you at the beginning of game one, you show your 15 card sideboard, and then you put it in your box.
Okay, here's my 15
game
card
two. Here's my
yeah,
exactly. And I've already shown you that I have 75 cards. You don't need to see them all again. And maybe I'm overboarding. Maybe there's only 14 cards left on my board now. Like I don't want to give you that information. That's giving you unnecessary information.
One thing I will stop you with though is it's not in the rules where you have to do it. One thing you have to do though is if your opponent says, I want to confirm that you have 15 cards in your sideboard, then you have to show them, okay, I have 15 cards. But in Japan, that's really, really direct and confrontational, and they do their best to avoid being confrontational, right? So the easiest way for them to avoid this whole situation is to just lay it out at the start. But inversely, one time I've seen it hurt someone. Well, not like completely hurt, but he just gave me information I didn't need to know. As like we boarded, and then game two, we sideboarded. He won game one, I won game two. So game three, he picks up his sideboard, he puts it down, he shows me, and he's like, I changed 2 cards. And I'm like, you don't need to tell me that you changed cards, bro. Like, come on. Like, any information that you give me is better than none. And for all I know, those 2 cards could have been something I saw that could have screwed up something that I had that he didn't see. And so I could know, like, okay, maybe he took that card out because he was holding onto it all of game one and it didn't do anything, So, yeah, it's just funny.
I had a similar experience at one point. I was playing against a guy, and he was showing me his 15 card sideboard, and he had he didn't have enough sleeves for the entire sideboard. So he had one that was in the perfect fit, like it was in a clear sleeve, but it wasn't in a sleeve.
He would have had to take out a different card and put that in just in case.
Yeah. So every single time he showed me that, I knew that there was one card that looked different from the other ones. Well, so game 2, he actually is like moving things in and out of the sleeves, and then he shows me a different card that I can clearly see, you know, because this one is all fucked up and marked up and shit on the back. And I'm like looking at that and I'm just like, uh-huh. So that's obviously a different card now.
Yeah.
Like,
and like to people who don't really play serious in tournaments, like why does that matter? And it's like any information matters.
yeah.
Even the littlest bit of information, it matters. You know?
Yeah.
And sometimes my opponents are just like 14 cards or something. And I'm just like, thanks for letting me know.
Yeah.
I would never have
61
asked.
cards in your deck.
Would
Now
never
if I need to
ever
mill
have,
you.
you know. So,
All right.
but one thing I like about that is I do like being I check my sideboard first, because there's been
I need
games
that
when
too.
I've forgotten to deboard because like maybe it was an intense game and either I won and I was like super like or I lost and I was like whatever, just decking, put my deck away and then like, you know, cool off or something. But yeah, I like to check my sideboard. So
It's always a good idea. All right. I think we're getting down to the wire
yeah.
as far as the podcast is going. To do something new, however, I wanted to know, do you have any shout outs that you would like to make to people who, you know, might be watching or might see this?
Yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to the Underground MTG Finance channel on Discord. You guys are the best. I'll give a shout out to my buddy Clinton. He's always watching these. My buddy Paul, he watches these too.
Word.
Even if it's just a couple of you guys watching, I really do appreciate it. Mason, what are your shout outs?
So the guy who, when I came back to Nagahama, when I left Osaka, and I basically made my way into the LGS because they had recently expanded their cards section. The first guy I bumped into, his name is Asahi, and he is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. He knows everybody, and he sort of runs our line group. And everybody knows him. He throws parties and invites a whole bunch of people and is very, very well connected, basically with everybody who plays MTG in Shiga. He had a baby yesterday. So I'd like to give a shout out to him and say congratulations to him because he is now a proud dad.
Very, very cool. Congratulations to Asahi. Did I meet Asahi at the GP?
No, unfortunately, he was not able to come out to the GP. He was not with that group. But he basically was the one who kind of formed the group. He was the one who kept getting contact information and getting everybody to meet everybody. And
sometimes just
that kind of
having the
stuff.
one person to do that really does bring the community together. And then after the one person kind of does that initially, then everyone else kind of gets together themselves. But really, sometimes that one person is more important than people realize for the scene. So shout
He's
out
a
to
mad
him.
legit dude.
Very, very cool.
All right, let's end this cast. Any bubbles today?
No, the malt was perfect. The blue can, if you ever come to Japan, this light blue can is the best stuff. No bubbles. I poured and I waited for the bubbles to be gone because no bubbles are the best.
No bubbles are the best. All right. Sayonara, Rob.
All right, sayonara.